Okay. All right. Yeah. We need a chair. Okay. No, no, she's gonna take a. We're gonna take chair. Oh, okay. There you go. Thank you very much, Pervin. All right. So for the second panel, which is crucial for us, especially for the young ones, to learn more about what are the perspectives and what are the positive examples that we can take from all across Europe and try to somehow adopt, accommodate to the procedures and rules and bylaws of Republic of Greece, but also show how beneficial is to have a diverse community within the countries and how much they can benefit to its economies, tourism, education, culture, and a coexistence of the local society. So today with me, I have Dr. Hywel Glyn Lewis. I hope I pronounced your name right, which is a program director for the Master's MA Bilingualism and Multilingualism, University of Wales, Trinity St. David, Wales in UK. We have Pervin Hayrullah, which is a general director of Western Thrace Culture and Education Company. And on the agenda, you might see that she is also a fluent member organization, but that's a typographical mistake by us. We are very, very sorry about that. We have Elena Prvulescu. She is representative of the Macedonian minority in Romania. And last but not least, we have Sabrina Rasom. She is director of the Ladin Cultural Institute, majon di
fascegn.
Majon di Fascegn, from Val di Fassa, province of Trento, and also an NPLD member organization. Thank you for coming to this important forum for us, and hopefully we will have a grateful discussion and a fruitful conversation. As a closing remarks, we will be joined by our United Macedonian Diaspora President Emeritus and co-founder Meto Koloski from United States. So let's begin first with Pervin, and then we will continue with the other speakers. Pervin, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. My colleague Emine talked about the history and the general issues about Turkish minority of Western Thrace. And in this session, I will go much more detail in education. Education in mother tongue is one of the vital issues for protection of minorities that have been treated differently by the authorities governing them. From time to time, nation states treated minorities as richness of their own national societies and safeguarded their rights, whether fully or partly, while sometimes discriminated, otherized, ghettoized, dissimulated, and even demonized minority groups and their long-standing ethnocultural values. For both types of treatment of minorities, education has turned to become one of the primary tools in the hands of national authorities seeking whether to integrate minority groups or assimilate them within the dominant majority culture. In this respect, bilingualism and getting education in both mother tongue and the official language have always played a vital role for the continuity of historical minorities. The former doesn't allow the disappearance of mother tongue, while the latter not only prevents any ghettoization or isolation, but also helps minority regimes to integrate and become a part of the majority society. In this context, how people acquire languages, how many languages can people acquire simultaneously, how people acquire their native languages, is the bilingual acquisition possible, like questions come to the fore. We can list many questions regarding this issue, but here I will focus on very briefly the linguistic competence, bilingualism and multilingualism, as well as the situation in Western Thrace, since linguistic is a bottomless pit. Linguistic theory is concerned primarily with an ideal speaker-listener in a homogeneous speech community, who knows its language perfectly and is unaffected by such grammatically irrelevant conditions as memory limitations, distractions, shifts of attention and interest, and errors in applying his knowledge of the language in actual performance. According to Pride, linguistic competence is the potential of performing a language. However, Curie explains competence as implied conceptual knowledge, that is, the speaker-hearer's knowledge. He also states that competence underlines all performance and, in a strangely circular way, depends on it, since statements about competence are ultimately verified by being part of performance. On the other side, Mambi points out that Chomsky makes two different claims for linguistic competence. First one is the neutral interpretation, which refers to the knowledge of the system of roles, which allowed structural description of the sentence. And the second one is that the rules of grammar are internalized in the head of speaker and provide the basis for his understanding of linguistic relations. According to the Fromkin and Rodman, people have the capacity to produce sounds that symbolize certain meanings and to interpret and understand the sound product produced by others. They continue by saying that knowing a language means knowing what sounds are in that language and what sounds are not. Knowing a language is knowing that certain sound sequences signify certain concepts or meaning. Knowing a language is, therefore, knowing how to relate sounds and meanings. Also, they state that knowing a language consists of knowing the appropriateness of sentences to the various situations. In short, linguistic competence is one's general knowledge that makes him or her able to communicate or produce limitless utterances. Bilingualism, on the other hand, means an ability to communicate in two languages that has many types, like simultaneous bilingualism or sequential bilingualism. In simultaneous bilingualism, one can speak two languages directly. The acquisition process works simultaneously for both languages. In sequential bilingualism, one can learn or acquire the second language after already established a first language or mother tongue. Bilingualism is a legal value, a social wealth, and a fact providing cognitive and social privileges for an individual in advanced civilization. Bilingualism determines the social status of the individuals, provides features such as social identity, as well as overlapping situations like language mixing and borrowing words. Bilingualism provides advantages to the individuals. Thus, they are more talented in perception processes. They are able to perceive both languages mentally. They have more advanced cognitive processes. To look over the situation in Western Thrace, the Turkish minority has bilingual Turkish and Greek education system, which was provided by the Peace Treaty of Lausanne and other laws and regulations. The expected natural outcome of this system is bilingual, Turkish and Greek speaker individuals. However, after the interventions, the structure of the system changed and the products became semilingual instead of being bilingual. This is the outcome of Greek minority policy, Greek minority education policy of Western Thrace. If we consider the issue in a narrower context and examine it point by point, it is possible to list the followings. There used to be around 300 bilingual minority primary schools functioning in Western Thrace. Even at the remotest highland villages with minority population. Yet, as many of them suffered from infrastructural problems, the vast majority of minority students had no other option than getting education in fully crowded rooms of dilapidated school buildings. However, in the passage of time, the overall number of bilingual minority schools dropped almost 3 times. from 300 to 86, an alarming level for the continuity of bilingual education in Western Thrace in the near future. Some more are likely to close in the following years for different reasons. As for education in mother tongue Turkish, many of those teachers teaching the Turkish courses lacked proper teacher education, many of whom were graduates of primary schools. The functioning of EPATH, Special Pedagogical Academy of Thessaloniki, between 1968 and 2010 resulted in a variety of problems regarding the teaching staff of the Turkish curriculum, while Greek authorities never prioritized minority teachers graduated from Turkish universities to teach the Turkish curriculum. The EPATH, this Special Pedagogical Academy, was established during the junta regime just to train Turkish teachers for the Turkish curriculum of Turkish minority schools, but without having proper teaching education. It was just 2-3 year academy, and they graduated from this academy without having proper Turkish teaching education, training. Greek education in Turkish minority schools has been systematically kept at a low level. Till the mid-2000s, Greece had not given any major priority or spent significant effort for promotion of bilingualism and bilingual education of her minority residents in Western Thrace. Instead, the aim was, or still is, to create a minority society that is doomed to ignorance and can be manipulated in a rural corner. Greek state apparatuses gradually and unilaterally penetrated into all realms of bilingual education in Western Thrace without almost any collaboration with the minority stakeholders, as a result of which the educational autonomy of the minority slowly disappeared. The Turkish minority stakeholders lost all their power and authority. They have almost no say on any matter about bilingual education in Western Thrace. In spite of unabated demands from the minority, the third or fourth bilingual secondary and high school has not been opened yet in Western Thrace. You may know there are two bilingual minority secondary and high school, one in Xanthi and the other one in Komotini. And in Xanthi, we have a very big problem about the building. It was a factory about 100 years ago, and our students still having courses, lessons in that building. We many times demanded from the Greek authorities to rebuild or renovate this building, but we are still waiting for a new building. In spite, bilingual secondary education is limited only to schools in two main cities of the region that have been functioning since 1952 and 1965. Bilingualism is almost absent at nursery and tertiary levels of education, and demand for opening of bilingual minority nursery schools have been falling on deaf ears of Greek authorities since its inclusion within compulsory education in 2007. As a foundation, we had 3 times, we applied to open a private nursery school in Komotini and in Xanthi. From 2011, we are still waiting an answer, and we applied again and again. Now the issue is on the court. We are still waiting just to open not a minority nursery school, private nursery school. We didn't mention anything about minority or majority, just private school. We are still waiting. In the light of this, it is worth noting that there is an urgent need to start an effective and sincere cooperation and collaboration with the minority stakeholders, targeting to improve the overall quality of bilingual education at minority primary schools. Greece should cease intervening unilaterally in matters regarding bilingual education and imposing new rules and regulations, regardless of decades-long demands of her minority members. New bilingual schools are needed at all levels of education. Inclusion of the mother tongue Turkish at nursery education and opening bilingual minority kindergartens should be promoted inside Western Thrace and other parts of Greece. The mother tongue Turkish and teaching of it at schools should be perceived as a contribution and richness to the Greek society and need to be promoted by Greek authorities rather than being treated as a potential threat for the unity of Greece. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pervin, for opening the eyes of and hearing more of the real experience on how is to fight and strive for education. We're not discussing about anything else. We're discussing about language, conversation, and keeping the how can I say, the tool that connects people and makes them communicate between themselves. So as I believe now we will be able to hear more about the Macedonian minority and an example of the Republic of Romania on how they are, what is the approach, what are the mechanisms used in different countries, and how we can somehow adopt all those examples here. So Elena, please join us.
Bună ziua, dobar den, kalimera, hello. My name is Elena Prvulescu. I came from Romania, and thank you very much for your invitations.
Can you put the microphone a little bit direct? Yeah.
I know that I'm not speaking very. In Romania, there are no schools teaching in Macedonian as mother tongue. And here we come to one of our big problems. How could we arouse the interest of the population of Macedonian origins, especially young people and children, to learn their mother tongue? It's a big problem in Romania. One of the reasons why the Macedonian language is, as a mother tongue is not of interest to the majority of ethnic Macedonians in Romania is the fact that there is no longer a Macedonian consciousness. The Macedonian identity has been lost. I am talking here about people born in Romania like myself. When I was little, I heard my grandparents speaking another language, different from mine, Romanian, but being a child, I didn't realize how important it is to keep your mother tongue, tradition, etc. That is everything that represents you as individual, your identity. In the village where my mother was born, it was said that we are either Bulgarians or Serbs. But my grandparents didn't say anything about it, and they spoke a different language from the two mentioned. After many years, I found out that, in fact, they spoke the Macedonian language, so I wanted to learn their language too. So I ended up living in Macedonia for a few years, where I studied the Macedonian language. Another problem for most of the Macedonians born in Romania is that they don't have documents. They don't know from where our ancestors came in Romania. It's a big problem, and this is the problem of my family too. The Macedonians settled on the territory of Romania in successive waves. The first documentary attestation going around the year 1000 300. Another important moment of the interpenetration of the two peoples, the Romanian and the Macedonian, is the arrival on the territory of the Romanian country of Nicodim from Tismana, born in the village of Nicodin near Prilep in Macedonia, the founder of several monasteries there. Macedonians have been recognized as a national minority in Romania since 2000, along with now 18. There were 19, now are just 18 other ethnic groups: Armenian, Albanian, Bulgarian, Czech, Croatian, Jewish, Greek, German, Italian, Hungarian, Polish, Russian, Roma, Ruthenian, Slovak, Serbian, Tatar, Turkish, and Ukrainian. In Romania, in the 2002 census, 731 people declared themselves as Macedonians. Also, almost 500 people declared that their mother tongue is Macedonian. At the census from 2021 year, 1,100 Macedonians officially declared themselves, but this is a provisional number. The final results will be announced in December this year. The Association of Macedonian of Romania, along with the organization of all other ethnic groups in Romania in the Council of National Minorities, a specialized advisory body of the Romanian government. Its member, I forgot. The Macedonian ethnic group is represented in the Romanian parliament, the Chamber of Deputies, since 2004. The Association of Macedonians in Romania is the only legal institution that represents the Macedonian community in Romania. It has a representative in the Romanian parliament. Among the achievements of the Association of Macedonians in Romania are organization of Macedonian language courses, publishing the literary creations of authors of Macedonian origin, organization of exhibitions and demonstrations of artists belonging to the ethnic group, organizations of camps and trips for members in Romania and Macedonia, the establishment of several folklore ensembles, celebrating the main secular and religious events in Macedonian's life. The Romanian government supported all of the minorities in Romania. All Romanian citizens have fundamental rights provided by the Constitution and which are based on international regulations. In addition to these rights, national minorities also enjoy specific fundamental rights. Like the relevant international regulation, the Romanian Constitution regulates the status of national minorities, enshrining the individual rights of persons belonging to these minorities. Some of these rights are the right to identity, ethnic identity, cultural identity, linguistic identity, religious identity, the right to learn and use one's mother tongue, the specifics of electoral rights. I don't want to speak too much because I'm not a good speaker. The funding of the activity of the organization of citizens belonging to national minorities is made from the state's budgets, as well as from private resources in these are just a few experts from the Romanian constitution regarding the rights of minorities on its territory. I have a link if you are interested to see. I gave it to Evgenia. The complete extract from the status of minorities in Romania. Thank you for your attention and patience with which you listened to my presentation. I hope we will meet again and another equally important occasions. Also, I hope for a future collaboration as extensive as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, no worries. I mean, not to be sorry for anything. Yeah.
We can discuss. We have many problems in Romania too, but we don't have time. We can discuss another time. Or I wanted just to point it some.
Well, I strongly agree, and I believe that we will always have problems with everything. But I want us to focus more on the positive things and the microphone.
In Romania, we have not just us Macedonians, but all the minorities. We have the help from the government, but we have so many problems. So we are happy for this, but we are sad for other things.
Yeah. So there is a room also for improvement everywhere, I believe,
Yes.
in all the countries,
Yes.
even in the most democratic countries and the most developed countries. However, I'm happy to hear that European Union member states have some positive outcomes and are not so much negative about having a diverse community within their countries. And I hope and I know that they have lots of benefits as well. With that being said, I would like to hear a positive example from our friends from Italy, and to hear more about the activities, the projects, the rights that they have in the Trento region. So with that being said, I would give the floor to Sabrina Rasom, and I will ask the technical staff. Oh, nice. Thank you very much for that. And I believe, yes, we're ready to go.
Yes, so thank you very much for having me here. And thank you very much also for your intervention I heard this morning and now, because it's very important to start from the point of view that we have to work together, even if we have different situations. We start from different historical and also identity backgrounds. The point is that we are all on the same boat and we have to struggle together, but also to celebrate together when we so achieve our aims. And so I think this is the mood we should so switch on in this moment, and every moment we meet to share our personal and public experiences. So the Ladins and Ladin in Fassa Valley. So I'm going to read some. Can I use this?
Yeah.
Is this way? This?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I will start from the historical and geographical context. I will also give some background about the socioeconomic context of Fassa Valley. And then I will give the stages of language policy in Fassa Valley, which are fundamental for us because we managed to develop these language policy actions and to achieve some positive contents. I will also give you some examples, only some, just to give you the results of our language policy actions. And then I will focus briefly on the relationship with the territory from where we come, on which we live, starting from the, I would say, modern point of view of multilingualism and interculturality at the place of bilingualism, because we are living in a very, very globalized world, and speaking about bilingualism perhaps has no reason anymore. So let's start from the historical and geographical context. So I will begin by outlining the geographical context of this area, which since the early geological incursions of the late 19th century and subsequently due to its tourist attractions, has been a cradle of narratives and romantic imagination, set in a natural context unique in the world, recognized as a natural heritage of humanity since 2009. The Dolomite Ladin valleys, also known as the Sella valleys. Sella is the massif you see over there with many tourists. So these valleys are arranged around this mountain, so split it somehow, but also converging towards this great Dolomitic massif. And the Ladin valleys include Fassa Valley, which is mine, Gardena and Badia Valley, and then another valley, which is Livina Longo, known in Latin as Sauramont. And you can see the map there. We are, you see in northern Italy, the green part, that's the region Trentino South Tyrol. And the region Trentino South Tyrol is split in two autonomous provinces. Autonomy is at the basis of our being, so let's say minority communities, but on the other way around, the autonomy of the region and of the two provinces bases on the fact that it has two minority communities on its territories. So after the World War I, when fascism came in, so particularly with the rise of fascism, these valleys were divided into two regions. That's Trentino South Tyrol, and then where you see Fodom, the other valley, and Ampezzo, the yellow one. We were split in three. A part, which is Valbadia, Valgardena, and Fassa Valley, were part of the region Trentino South Tyrol, which is autonomous. And the other part, Ampezzo and Fodom, other Ladins, they were comprehended in the region Veneto, which is nearby. And the reason was that after the First World War, we became part of Italy, because before the First World War, we were part of Austria, of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Ladins were there all together. When we became part of Italy, Italy wanted so all peoples becoming part of it to be Italianized, sorry. And so they decided to split the Ladins, because the Ladins were somehow dangerous. We were very, so let's say, aware of our identity, and they didn't want us to somehow damage this intention of Italianizing all the state. And so it happened that Ladins were splitted, and this political division had a significant impact on the social-linguistic identity and cultural evolution of the valleys, creating an evident disparity in the safeguarding of the Ladin language and culture, particularly to the detriment of the Ladins on the Venetian side, so on the Veneto side, in the region which is not an autonomous region. In the educational context in particular, the minority language has been treated very differently across the three provinces. effectively for Ladin in the province of Bolzano, so South Tyrol, where also Germans are there, so these German communities. On the side of the province of Trento, where I live and where the Fassa Valley is, we have increasingly in-depth interventions for education and also for language policy actions, while for the historical Ladins of the province of Belluno, so part of the Veneto region, they have no rights at all. Or let's say there is a statal law, but it's very difficult to implement it, because I think that the core is the fact for us, the positive aspect is that we are autonomous provinces and autonomous regions. And in that case, it's not the state that cares about language policy actions and about education, but it is the province where we live. And that recognizes the fact that we somehow are at the basis of the autonomy. And so near this, let's say that 100 years ago, when the fascism came, politician and researcher so committed to the fascism, when the Italian state asked, what about the Ladins? What should we do with the Ladins? He answered, don't worry. Here you have Italians and part of Germans who were asked to optate, to decide if to remain with Italy or to go back to Austria or to Germany. And after this, they didn't, so this Ptolemy, this researcher and politician said, so Ladins are a gray spot to be erased. They have to disappear. But after 100 years, we are still here. And last year we celebrated this 100 years Ladinity with a title of the a conference, which was Ladins, a colorful spot, because we are still there and we are still struggling and having positive results. So, despite the evident challenges posed by the tripartition, the Ladins of the Sella have maintained their identity, continuing to perceive themselves as a part of a common linguistic, cultural, and traditional unity. This has occurred within a socio-economic context that has undergone rapid and constant transformations since the 70s, a period during which the tourism phenomenon has significantly altered both the territory and the community. The relationship between man and environment has been profoundly changed, shifting from a rural and subsistence economy to a thriving tourist economy, with meadows and pastures, once designed for cultivation and livestock, transformed into building lots of hotels, second homes, and ski slopes. Despite these strong repercussions, the intangible heritage, linguistic and cultural, has managed to remain alive in these places. With a population of around 10,000 inhabitants only in Fassa Valley, we are about 40,000 in all the valleys. There are 60,000 beds and 440,000 annual tourists visiting Fassa Valley from around the world. So they are huge. Questions arise about how this community manages to reconcile its precious, intangible linguistic and cultural heritage with mass tourism, which poses a potential threat to Ladin. The situation takes on further significance for the Ladin people, who have historically faced significant milestones and changes regarding their identity and recognition. The minority-focused and multicultural Habsburg society, so in Austria, of which they were part as Ladins until the end of the World War I, has allowed them to find a balanced position among different peoples and cultures. So history teaches to live in a melting pot, in a multicultural society, as the Austrian-Hungarian Empire used to be. Today, learning from their history, the valleys and Ladin peoples value and reinterpret this heritage, adapting it to contemporary needs, thus continually rewriting their history. Multilingual, multi-ethnic, and multicultural coexistence is not limited to the peak tourist seasons, with tourists coming really from all over the world, but has become an integral part of daily life. The Ladin social structure, like that at national and international levels, has undergone and is undergoing transformation, integrating with a foreign population, Italian but primarily from abroad, that resides in Fassa Valley to work in the tourism sector. These new families will enroll their children in local schools because, as you will see, we have the Ladin school, and it is compulsory also for people coming from outside. And so Ladin is taught and spoken, thus fast fostering integration into the community. As a result, collective history evolves, as do individual and relational stories, both for the welcoming Ladins and for the new residents who bring with them an original cultural, linguistic, and identity heritage. At the same time, the new Ladin generations are showing radical changes in their attitudes towards identity and traditions. These changes do not represent an abandonment, but rather an adaptation and reinterpretation that respond to an innate desire to be protagonists of their own history and of their own future, I would say, leaving a mark of their time. So let's see very briefly the stages of language policy in Fassa Valley. We will analyze the language policy of Fassa Valley from the perspective of status, corpus, and acquisition planning, which correspond respectively to the legal and administrative recognition of the minority, the standardization of the language and the creation of linguistic tools for its correct writing and dissemination, and finally to teaching, the prestige of the language and its normalization. So you have here, the socioeconomical context. You see a lot of tourists, but also great mountains and a huge universal heritage. And let's start then from here. So regarding status planning, the Ladin minority is recognized at the regional level in the autonomy statutes of 1948, 1972, and 2001 in the region Trentino-South Tyrol, along with the other two linguistic minorities of Germanic origin, the Moccani and the Cimbri in the province of Trento, which are very, very small German communities in the province. A modern language policy law inspired by the principle of the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages was enacted in 2008. This legislative text consolidates the rights of the Ladins of Fassa Valley into a single document of great value and foresight. In the 70s, the Ladin Comprensorio of Fassa Valley, known at the moment as Comune General de Fassa, which acts as an intermediary body between the municipalities and the province of Trento, and the Majon di Fassa, which is the Ladin Cultural Institute, of which I have the honor of being the director, they were founded. And so we had these milestones to refer to from the administrative and the cultural point of view, respectively. Among the responsibilities assigned to these two entities is the management of the Ladin language and culture, carried out through language policy interventions that cover various areas outlined by provincial law and the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages. So these milestones are information in the minority language. Then we have toponymy, Ladin language and culture, curricular and vehicular teaching in the Ladin school, which is here. And this from kindergarten to the high school. So, okay, we are a very small valley, but the school has been organized as a unique entity. And this entity starts from, let's say, the nursery school and ends with the high level school. This means that our students, even if they are not mother tongue in Ladin, they have to attend the school with Ladin in there. So using different languages, Ladin, German, Italian, and English in different ways, and trying to balance, because of course we are also part of Italy, and we are happy to be there. I mean, and so this is a positive solution, because school gives these new speakers coming from new families the way to learn Latin, and then to help us to safeguard our language and to share with them our being minority community, and our so aim to safeguard the language. So there are a lot of projects. I don't have the time to go in depth in all of these. We have here the Ladin Cultural Institute, which is a public institution to which all our students, but also all people living in Fassa Valley and coming from outside, can refer in order to have information about language and culture. And then we also developed two sociolinguistic surveys. One is of about the end of the 20th century, and one is of 2021, where we try to monitor the situation of the Ladin community, in particular from the linguistic point of view. And from there, we start language policy actions in order, in particular, to involve families and young people in the value of being minority community and going on in this way to safeguard the Ladin community. And then there is didactics also inside the museum and the Ladin Cultural Institute you saw before, using tools that are modern, in which young people can recognize themselves as being part of a world which is developing, and they have to understand that that Ladin is not something old, but it's something that goes on, and that keeps this confrontation with the majority languages. And then again, this is the reason why I asked this question this morning. We are trying to involve young people. These are traditions. They are in the Ladin Museum, and there they are in a meeting when they become of age in Fassa Valley, when they are 18. They wear these chapels, and they are somehow celebrate their being grown up. And this is a tradition that's very old, but they managed to reinterpret it, to go on and work in this field, feeling that they have to give something to the new generations coming, and to give a future to their traditions and also to their language. In this case, we had a DJ in our museums. DJ in this case means for us D, okay, and they come to the museum, and we gave the museum to our young Ladin people for a week, and they celebrated their Ladinity as they wanted with this DJ, and with their giving a revival to traditions and to language. And then we participate also to activities that are at European level through the Network to Promote Linguistic Diversity. And so young people coming from all over Europe and belonging to different minority communities, they are invited to participate. But also schools that don't belong to minority communities can participate if they have minority language-speaking people studying there. And so this is a way to say your language is something with which you can go out of your region. You can participate in Europe. So the tourism industry is also involved in all this, sorry. And we try also to involve tourists in our Be minority community, even if they come to Fassa Valley to ski and for the Dolomites. But we are something else, and we are proud to say to them that we are something else. We are not only mountains. We are people living there and wanting to survive. And so this is a last example that is shared identities. We launched this project 2 years ago. We have a lot of these people coming from all over the world, and we propose them to share their identities with us because they live in Fassa Valley for work reasons. They come from Southern America, from Hungary, from Poland, from everywhere. And they decide to live there with their families. And we shared the Ladin identity with them, saying we are all minority communities here in Italy and also in the region Trentino South Tyrol. And it's interesting because we have people coming out of Tunisia and also from Albania, for example. And we have a very young girl who shares her identity in her Albanian identity on one hand, but on the other hand, she celebrates our traditions and she speaks Ladin. It is something that serves to us to develop and to have more and more speakers, involving them in our future. So now briefly, but I don't think I have time anymore. No, I have some minutes. Yeah. And so now let's go to the relationship with the territory. We are Ladins because we live in Fassa Valley. This is very particular for Fassa Valley. Otherwise, I mean, in the other autonomous province, which is Bolzano, for example, they declare themselves Ladins in South Tyrol, or German or Italian. It's personal. As about the province of Trento, Ladins are declared as people living in Fassa Valley. And so if you enter Fassa Valley, you are Ladin. Your territory is Ladin. And so this relationship is very deep for us, the relationship with territory. And then some considerations about multilingualism and interculturality. So the concept of linguistic normalization represents a challenge for Ladin in Fassa Valley because we need to speak the language, not only to use it at school. We need to show that we are, of course, Ladin. This process can be defined as the organization and sometimes reorganization of the linguistic functions of the language, adapting it to its social functions when external conditions change, as it happened in Fassa Valley. Regarding Ladin, based on the linguistic inquiry we have in 2021, it can be asserted that the change in external conditions has occurred as a result of the radical transformation of Fassan society due to the advent of mass tourism in the 70s and the expansions of Italian and Italian-speaking people, even in informal sociolinguistic contexts. These changes coincided with the internal adoption of language policy actions, as said, for the minority language, initiated mainly since the second half of the 19th, aiming to increase the prestige of the language, even in more formal contexts, to ensure its survival. Such actions have involved the creation of databases and dictionaries, the introduction of the use of the Ladin language in public administration, awareness-raising actions on bilingualism, and the first sociolinguistic research on Dolomite Ladin starting from the 19th, such as the Survey Ladins in the 1990s, followed by the recent 2021 sociolinguistic research. However, the implementation of language policy actions may not have adequately considered the need to prepare and train the community for a radical change in the status of a language, considered until that point essentially limited to the informal sphere. When it became formal, that there was somehow a reluctance of the population to use it at public level in the school, for example, and we had to work on it. Now it is good, now it functions, but before it was really difficult. Language policy actions are primarily undertaken to protect and safeguard the language. Therefore, in addition to being a right, using it and committing to its preservation becomes a responsibility of the community itself, which must be informed and trained in this regard. We have to know from where we come and where we want to go. And all people have to be involved in this process, even young people. It is hypothesized that the Ladin community has not adequately grasped the motivation behind the language policy actions implemented, and the rights they have not been transformed in a duty to keep on using this minority language. It is something that has to do with, yes, now I have the right and it's okay. But if you want your language to survive, you have to use it and to feel involved in this, not to say, okay, I can use it when I want. Because if you do so, it can be that other majority language suffocate your minority language. So you have to feel really engaged. To ensure the protection of the language, the use of Latin must not be seen as an optional act or a simple right of the community or individual, but as a necessity. To implement the normalization of the Latin language, it is essential to move from an attitude to unaware normality. Yes, I am Latin and I speak Latin when I want, to one of conscious normalization. I am conscious. I know that my language has to survive. This unaware normality refers to the spontaneous use of the language in contexts that the speakers consider appropriate and familiar until the process of linguistic norming and normalization begins, so starting from the 90s. Conversely, conscious normalization implies speakers and communities to be aware of the need to use the language to ensure its preservation and protection. In this context, the use of the language is no longer just a right, but also a duty and responsibility that the speaker and the community are called upon to fulfill, representing a shared choice between the individual and the community. And so to end this speech, I would like to quote Krauss, which is a linguist, very known researcher in this field. And he says, basing the concept on the principle of equity rather than equality between the languages present in a specific context does not imply assigning a formally equal treatment to all languages. It rather includes implementing specific measures targeted towards the promotion of the more disadvantaged language or languages, which typically are languages that have historically been minorized and mistreated through political domination. And so we have to focus and to say we don't want to be as the others, as the Greeks are the majority language spoken, but we need to have something more in order to be able to look on the other side, because we are in any case smaller. So this is, I guess, the future of our language policy actions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sabrina, for your great speech and showed examples on how prosperous can be one community and how can contribute to the majority of the society, or in your case, the Italian society or the Republic of Italy.
Presentation here because
I have your.
Yeah, but I've cut it down. Can you put it on that?
Let me check. Any port left? You updated? You
It's
updated?
been updated, yes, because my original was far too long.
Because I downloaded yesterday. So just wanted to thank you again, Sabrina, for your great speech. We're gonna have the floor open afterwards for a Q&A session and be able to discuss more. But it's really impressive on how many activities, projects you do as a community, and what mechanisms do you use for attributing those parts. But let's hear now the speech of Dr. Hywel Glyn Lewis, and then afterwards we are gonna open the floor for questions and for discussion. Yep.
I think so, yeah.
I think we are ready. You want to sit here or?
No, I want to start.
Okay,
here.
yeah, it's
Is
fine.
it on? Oh. Get the microphone for translation. Oh, right. Oh, right. Right. Okay. Right. Good afternoon. Is this? It is. Good afternoon. My name is Hywel Glyn Lewis. My presentation is a bit long, but I'm going to take you through it very quickly. Does this work? It's actually working just fine. Right? Oh, you are. Right. Well, this is Wales, and I'm going to give you the political ideological background first of all, and as well some demographic details, just to put the whole thing in context. This is Wales down there on the left, but you might be interested to know that in fact that Welsh was actually spoken at one time up in that area of England. Believe it or not, this is hard to believe, I know, but this is the British flag, on which we are not. In other words, we are not actually identified on the British flag at all. And this is basically because we were assimilated into the so-called British Isles much earlier. It has been referred to as one of Europe's most robust minority languages. I like this particular quotation. Welsh is without a doubt a history of survival against all odds. And it's a testament to the commitment of the Welsh speakers that it has survived along one of the world's most influential languages in a hegemonic political context. And that word hegemonic is very important. It is, in fact, England's first colony. It's been identified by American as England's first colony, and therefore it's an example of internal colonialism as opposed to external colonialism. The reason why we were assimilated much earlier was than Scotland and Ireland and so on, is because in 1536 the Act of Union took place, and Henry VIII decided that Welsh was not going to be acknowledged as of being any worth to anyone if they wanted any official posts within the so-called United Kingdom. So we've got a number of significant historical events, both for and against the Welsh language. 1536, Act of Union. 1847, the treason of the Blue Books. That's when some people came to Wales to have a look at what we had of an education system at the time. And they decided, in fact, that the whole problem was the Welsh language and that all children should just learn English. So they had a piece of wood around their neck, children, and whoever, in fact, spoke Welsh in a lesson, and whoever had that piece of wood around his neck at the end of the day, because it would be transferred from child to child, then the child would be physically beaten. So we have actually had a situation where the language has been physically beaten out of us. You might be interested, the same thing actually happened in other countries as well. Ironically, for example, the Greeks in Australia, Greek children in Australia had their mouths actually washed out with soap and water. So the Greeks have actually suffered the same problem as well. Okay? Okay, now here's what has actually happened to the Welsh language over a period of decades, obviously, 1891, 2021, because we have a census every single year, every 10 years, that is, I mean. So we've had, since 1891, we've had a drop in speakers from 54% of the population down to the last census, which was 17.8. Now, you might be interested in comparing 1991 there in red with 2021, because in 1991, we had 508,000 speakers, 100, which was 18.7 of the population. And in 2021, we had 538,000 speakers, but only 17.8% of the population. So there's obviously an issue there, which can be explained in a minute, because what has actually happened, if you have a look at that, the number of speakers, first of all, has dropped. If you look at the black spaces there, it's gone down and down and down. You can see the black area is becoming whiter and whiter, as it were, indicating, in fact, that the amount of the number of Welsh speakers is in fact dropped grammatically. If I do that for you, you can see here in 1991 how many the green areas where over 70% of the population spoke Welsh in those areas. And it is, of course, recognized that you need, in order to have a linguistic viability, you need to have at least 70% of the community to speak that language in terms of usage. Well, by the time you actually come to 2001, that's only in 10 years, that has actually dropped down. So I'm going back to 1991, and then you go to 2001, you can see the difference. I happen to live in one of those green spots right down the bottom, by the way, right on the left-hand side. So I still, to all intents and purposes, live in a Welsh-speaking community. Now, 92%, there were 92 communities in Wales speaking, with 70% of the population speaking Welsh in 1991. By 2011, it's dropped to 41. So we are facing a problem, okay? Right, so what is the reason? I'm explaining now the difference between what I referred to earlier on, that in fact you had a higher number of speakers and a lower percentage earlier on. Because between 1981 and 1990, we had 600,000 people coming, choosing to settle in Wales. It's a beautiful country, okay? I wouldn't say it's more beautiful than Fassa Valley, by the way, having been there, but it is a beautiful country, and people want to move in. We are by now referred to as strangers in our own land, and demographically, the border of Wales, as we speak to it, is being pushed to the west, right? We haven't quite reached the sea yet, but now then, here we have, this is the density of incomers coming into Wales in 1991. The bluer, the darker it is, the blue, that represents the density of incomers. So in 1991, there you have it. In 2001, 10 years later, there you have it. So let me go back, compare the two. Right? You might be interested in showing actually that if you go back again, you'll see one area there, give you a clue, it's at the bottom, that in fact it doesn't change hardly at all. It's a very light blue color, and that area hasn't been affected at all. Why? Because that's the industrialized area of South Wales. People don't want to move into areas where there are coal mines. Okay? So they kept away from there, but they have in fact gone for the beautiful area, which tends to be in the north and the mid Wales. Now then, the other side of the coin is the out-migration, not in-migration, because young people have problems buying houses and finding jobs, and therefore they're being forced out. So if you take the red part there, the numbers of Welsh speakers aged 15 in 1991 was 24.6 of the age group. Now, by the time those people, 10 years later, in 2001, they're only 70.4 of the age group. So we are actually losing Welsh speakers going to England, for example. And if you look at the bottom point there, 690,000 estimated as Welsh speakers in the UK in 2001. Most of them have gone to England, by the way, for work. So in-migration, out-migration, both a problem. Two aspects of the same coin. So we're a society and culture under threat, okay? And in-migrants from England perceived to be, tend to be historically, I heard a similar issue being referred to this morning. Being alien to Welsh society, its values and sense of identity, typically as being economically better off and feeling superior, socioeconomically superior and culturally superior for some reason, right? More likely to take control than to blend in, and causing locals to be severed from their own culture. Okay, so we there have this quote that in fact migration processes continue to change the linguistic character of Welsh-speaking communities in many parts of Wales. Okay, that's what Denison, how he delineates language shift. You start off in a country with only one language. It's monoglot, single language, right? Then you have A, and then you have A1, and another language comes in, which is B2. And the next step, of course, is that B2 becomes B1, and A1 becomes A2. And eventually, the original language disappears altogether, and A becomes B. And that is the ultimate step in language shift. So where are we on this continuum? Well, if you look at the 2001 census, you've got, as I said before, we're down now to 18.7% of the as being Welsh speakers. But in fact, if you look at the bottom there, I'm hurrying this obviously, but if you look at the biggest decrease in the percentage of Welsh speakers is seen in the 5 to 15 age category, from 40.3% in 2011 to 34.3% in 21. So our census is telling us all the time that we have a problem, okay? We have a problem. Now, this is the Lewin's force field theory. I don't know if you're au fait with this, but in fact, he actually refers to changes as being driving forces on one side and restraining forces on the other. And it's a case of trying to keep an equilibrium in the middle, as if you're in government, for example, okay? And this equilibrium paradigm or conflict paradigm, I was tempted to delete this slide in my presentation, by the way, but a few things cropped up this morning and I decided to put it back in, because in fact, it is a case of equilibrium. If you, any political ideology, if you in fact you're dealing with minority languages, and by the way, I should say, I don't use the word minority language. I use the word minoritized language, because languages tend to be minoritized. They don't happen to be minority in the first place. They are minoritized because of the political ideology surrounding them. So we should not use the word minority language, in my opinion. And when you try and keep a political equilibrium in terms of government and the wider political ideology, you do this, don't you? If you drop enough crumbs from the table, a dog will not bark. And we haven't barked for many, many, many years, until quite recently, basically. If you want to keep people quiet, just give them a few odds and ends here and there, just to keep them ticking over. But don't feed the dog. Don't feed the dog. Just give him crumbs, and the dog will be happy. It's an interesting analogy. So we have restraining forces and bad news, the demographic trends, the in-migration into the Welsh-speaking Wales, ambivalent attitudes towards the Welsh language, poor levels of language acquisition among students of Welsh as a second language. I'll come to that later on, as a second language. A degree of hemorrhaging. Of course, some people might say, well, you should be happy that in fact they're being taught a second language. I'm well aware of that. But in fact, it's not a system that is fruitful at the moment. We have a degree of hemorrhaging in the numbers of pupils as they proceed through Welsh medium education. And then you have varied use of Welsh amongst the younger generation. So we have driving forces on the one hand, the good news, and you know, we should in fact here just celebrate these things because we've got a number of issues. We've had a number of strategies being published by the Welsh government. Okay, they haven't all actually materialized, as it were, but we are by now having governmental support in this. We've got a 1993 Welsh Language Act, which makes the Welsh language officially equal with England and so, with English and so on. And then we have a number of recent publications. Welsh Medium Education Strategy in 2010. We've actually got even, we've established a Welsh Medium National University. So we've got a system of education through the medium of Welsh language from the bottom right up to the top, okay? And then we've got this recent publication, which is Cymraeg 250, 1 million Welsh speakers. So we are now on a strategy to actually create 1 million Welsh speakers by 2000 sorry, that should be 2050, not 250. Okay, right. These are the most recent Welsh government publications. So we've got the government on our side. That was not the case in the past. So we can actually relish the fact that we are now getting strong governmental support. And it's serious support as well. The government really wants this to happen. Okay. Now, one of the things, I don't know how fair you are with academic frameworks and so on, but it's a well-known factor that in terms of UNESCO's language vitality factors, that intergenerational language transmission is essential. The absolute number of speakers, of course, is important, but not only that, but the proportion of Welsh speakers amongst the whole population. It's the proportion, and I mentioned earlier on that you need to have a 70% proportion in order to ensure language vitality. In terms of the reversing language shift, RLS is an academic acronym that we are very familiar with. It comes from Fishman's Graded Intergenerational Disruption Scale, and in stage 6 of that scale, he actually emphasizes the need for intergenerational transmission. Now, my understanding, in fact, is that something that you might, in fact, can celebrate, even though you haven't got an education system as such. And that is important because it is a very good base to actually work on. Unfortunately, due to in-migration in Wales, that, in fact, has ceased to be intergenerational transmission because of in-migration, you get mixed families. And when you get mixed families, it tends to not happen in terms of intergenerational transmission when the father is the Welsh speaker. If the mother is the Welsh speaker, it tends to transmit, but not when the father's. Anyway, we engage in different language planning activities: acquisition, status, corpus, and usage. In other words, family language reproduction, status. In other words, we've got The Welsh language now is actually an official language in Wales, so it's used in all public bodies in the public sector, not in the private sector. Although the private sector is very keen to do it. Why? Because there's money involved from the Welsh speakers, right? It's well worth doing that. I will have a slide later on showing you how that works. And then we plan in terms of the corpus, keeping the language modern, as it were, that we've got scientific terminology, technological terminology, and we also plan in terms of the uses of the language. Okay, abstract planning is something I thought I'd keep in, because abstract planning is where you create a kind of planning which in fact you can't simply superimpose in a different situation. It's all very well planning in one situation, but if you try and move that to a totally different situation, because the social and socioeconomic variables, for example, are different, you only need one variable to change and it can upset the whole thing. So I like this quote here. If one thing that can be learned from language contact studies, it is how important the overall social context is. Social linguistics is not like chemistry. And when you put two languages together, the same thing does not always happen. Okay, now then, here we have the Cymraeg 2050 Million Welsh Speakers Agenda. It's in three themes, three strategic themes: increasing the number of Welsh speakers, increasing the use of Welsh. There's no point having Welsh speakers if they don't speak it, if they don't use it. And then theme 3, creating favorable conditions. So there you have the increase in number of Welsh speakers. It goes right through the education system, as you can see, okay? Including transmission in the family, the early years, right up to university education. The second theme is increasing the use of Welsh, workplace, services, social use of Wales. And theme 3 is creating favorable conditions where the Welsh language can be seen, okay? I should tell you about, in the past, the way that the Welsh language has changed with us is about, I mentioned this equilibrium conflict paradigm. Young Welsh speakers back in the 1970s actually decided to do something about it. And they went out and they tore down the monoglot English road signs, and they painted them green. And it drew attention to the fact that the Welsh language was not getting fair play. And that's where the whole thing has started, in my opinion, anyway. Okay? So a bit of conflict has actually happened in Wales, where people have gone, they were, in fact, some of them were jailed, by the way, I should tell you that. But it actually created a different attitude amongst the government towards Welsh speakers. There you have one of the, I just threw that in. There you have a very, very large, well-known store in Wales, a supermarket where, in fact, all the signs are in Welsh. Public announcements are in Welsh, and so on and so forth. Okay? This is an old strategy. 2003, they wanted a 5% increase in the number of Welsh speakers in 2001, right? By 2011, which did not happen. Okay? Then you had another one in 2012, another strategy, and that again really did not materialize, to be honest. But this one now, in fact, is the 2050 strategy is very much on target, as it were. Okay, now in order to respond to these problems we actually had, this is just an example of all these initiatives about the use of Welsh. We've had Mentra Iaith, local initiatives to use the Welsh language. That's what Mentra Iaith means. It translates as language ventures. We've had people moving in, actually, in hospitals, where maternity units, and speaking to prospective mothers about bringing up their children in the Welsh language and sending them to Welsh medium education. That's just example. We've got IRGO by Cymru is a European organization which uses the Welsh language. It's the largest youth festival in Wales, in Europe. You've got young farmers clubs using the Welsh language, and you've got community newspapers in Welsh as well. Okay, so the future of the Welsh language is intimately connected with the attitudes of those who do not speak Welsh. You recognize that? It's just a pure mathematical answer. There's no point in going to the Welsh speakers. You need to recruit elsewhere from non-Welsh speakers. So where do they come from? Okay, so it's a mathematical solution basically to a lack of intergeneration transmission. And I've already listed those, what the problems are. Change in linguistic environment. Circumstantial bilingualism is no longer generating the required number of speakers because of intermarriage and so on and so forth. So there's an increasing pressure therefore on schools to shoulder the burden if the linguistic strategy is to materialize. Okay, the Welsh Government strategy places a duty on all local authorities in Wales to increase the proportion of all school year pupils that receive their education in the medium of Welsh. So we've now got all the schools in Wales in the net. Sorry? Oh, sorry. All the schools in Wales are now in the net. You can't get away from it, okay? And the Welsh medium education is seen as a major plank in language revitalization and language reversal. Now, there's already a rapid growth. I'll go back one thing to that point. There's already a rapid growth in Welsh medium education, bilingual education, okay? But we want to increase that even further. Okay, so the targets are that there was an increase of 22% in 2017, 30% by 2031, and 40% by 2050, okay? Including English medium schools. Now, I'll explain to you the education system in a minute, okay? But there are three areas of education, three structures, as it were, okay? There you have heritage or maintenance bilingual educations for Welsh speakers, okay? Then you have these traditional Welsh medium schools in the Welsh medium heartland, but also taught through medium of English. And then you have second language bilingual education, where the Welsh language is taught as a subject only, as if they were teaching geography. So they get a lesson on a Monday morning, they get a lesson on a Thursday afternoon, for example. But not enough in order to create speakers, because that method of teaching languages is acknowledged internationally as the most disastrous methodology you can adopt. And yet it's used throughout the UK to teach modern languages, okay? The way to teach a modern language, a way to teach a language is to use it as a means of teaching other subjects. It's the growth of medium education has been in three steps. First of all, you had Welsh medium schools in Anglicized areas for those children who lived in Anglicized areas but who I was speaking. And then it moved to speakers in Welsh as a second language. Why? Because parents who did not speak Welsh in those Anglicized areas realized that the Welsh schools were better performing academically. In fact, they kept on referring to them as free school, public school education free of charge, because the results in Welsh medium schools were academically superior. And then finally, the stage three, we had Welsh medium schools in the Welsh-speaking areas. Why? Because the in-migration problem into the Welsh-speaking areas, the Welsh schools, Welsh medium education needed to be protected. Okay, now these are three political dimensions of language education. Languages are right.
Sorry to interrupt. We have 3 to 4 minutes more, and then
Right.
we will need to wrap it up.
Languages are right, language is a problem, and language is a resource. If you sell Welsh medium education as a resource, then you're on a winner rather than a problem. So what we don't understand, we fear, and what we fear, we reject. And that's why people reject bilingualism. they don't understand what it's all about, even though it has cognitive benefits. So I'm going to have to fly on this and actually mention to you that, in fact, that we now have a strategy where, in fact, local authorities now have Welsh and education strategic plans. And all schools in Wales will have to start moving up or increasing the amount of Welsh they teach. Now, the analogy that I use, by the way, is the football leagues. All leagues in football, whether you're in the bottom league or whether you're in the top league, you want to improve and you want to get to the championship league. You want to compete in Europe. And all schools have been given that challenge. Wherever you are, whether you're an English medium school, whether you're a bilingual school teaching Welsh and English, or whether you are considered to be a Welsh medium school, you now have to move up over a number of years. Every 5 years, you must increase, you must have promotion within the leagues. You must be promoted. So, for example, the quickest way I can actually do this for you, apologies for running out of time, but this is the kind of thing. If you're in category 1, English medium, you're expected to move in 5 years and transition into category 2. And if over the next 5 years, you're expected to transition into category 1 with Welsh medium. That applies to primary schools, and it also applies to secondary schools. So by 2050, theoretically, according to this plan, all schools will be Welsh medium. They will teach English, of course. They will teach English. And ironically, the English results in Welsh medium schools is superior to what the English results are in English medium schools. Because it tells you that when you learn through 2 languages, it affects the brain. There are cognitive benefits. So if you want to sell your language, sell your language on the basis of the cognitive effects of being bilingual or trilingual, but not a monoglot. Now, I could speak to you about a theory called the threshold theory, where in fact it is shown that in fact the more bilingual and balanced bilingual you are, the more in fact it affects your ability right across the curriculum, because you have these cognitive advantages. And that is a unique selling point. Okay? I understand that my time is running out, yes? Okay, but that effectively is where we've arrived at Wales, that the government now is in fact promoting Welsh medium education, and that all children are expected to take on both languages and become proficiently bilingual. So we have the government on our side. So despite the fact that there's been a drop in speakers, we are now on a revitalization mission, and a serious mission in order to do it. We have a lot to teach other languages about how it's done, but this is a simplified version, because when you talk about revitalization, it has many aspects, and I have had to speed through this particular presentation this afternoon, and I've had to pick and mix a few things, and as you saw at the end, I've had to leave out a few slides. But this is a very, very exciting strategy we're on, whereby we have now got total government support as well. Okay, if you want to talk about or discuss the matter individually, I'm quite happy to do so later on, or tonight, or whenever you'd like. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Professor, for your great speech and giving simply a lecture on how to address and how to behave with the modern trends and the movements of the population in all the countries, I would say, not only Wales, because we are it's obvious going on the streets and hearing small children, the youth, basically the future of the country, speaking in another language, or I would say they're adopting some English words within our languages as well. And I know that we as a country, for instance, had a huge problem of the new generations coming in the schools and they speak only in English. They forget about their native language, even though it's not bilingual or trilingual, as you mentioned before. But with this, I would like to close our session, second session. But before we close it, I want to open the floor for Q&A session or questions. So anybody who has questions, feel free to address them now. And then you can pass back up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Despina. I have a question for Dr. Lewis. Okay, so I understand that Irish Gaelic and Scottish Gaelic could be the same thing. There's a drop in knowing that language, the same like it is in Wales. Like people don't know much about the Welsh language. Same thing in Ireland and Scotland. So you say that the government is on your side. Does that mean domestic government, the UK government? Like, is it a whole UK problem? Are they doing the same in Ireland and Scotland? I just want to get your input on this.
I wouldn't imagine that, in fact, I could ascertain that the UK government, there's a huge tension. I think in my first slide, I actually mentioned possibly there's a tension ideologically, politically between us and the UK government.
No, of course.
Because as far as UK government is concerned, the attitude towards languages is that they all speak English anyway, okay? In England, the attitude is that everyone should speak English.
Right,
No one,
but
no
my
one
thing
needs a
is,
second language.
sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
now that nowadays, of course, Britain being a westernized country, the whole point of nowadays is inclusivity. So part of the democratic ideals are inclusivity, making everyone feel welcomed and just seen. So is UK doing anything for inclusivity? Is what I'm saying.
Does the UK do anything? No, we have a devolved government. We have a devolved government in Wales, and we have a devolved government in Scotland, okay? And Northern Ireland as well. So the whole of the UK is devolved in terms of political governance is concerned. So in Wales, we do our own thing. And since Welsh is our language, we've decided in Wales that in fact we've got to do something about the drop in speakers that's happened over the decades. But we don't get any assistance from England, no.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was my question. All right.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments because I'm not sure if it's becoming clear from the presentation of Hayrullah how different the problems you are facing in Italy and Wales is from the situation in Thrace. The minority in Thrace was recognized officially by the Lausanne Treaty in 1923, which means that it's a recognized minority, which is not the case of the Macedonian minority. It was recognized as a Muslim minority. At that time in Turkey, the primary identity was Muslim, not Turkish. So the Kemalist project was to make Muslims into Turkey. And they wanted to extend this to Greece, to the Muslims in Greece. Further on, if we speak about bilingual education, we should have in mind that as late as in the 1960s, in the Komotini or Rhodope area, it was just a handful of minority members who had any significant command of Greek. Most of them didn't know any Greek at all. So in that case, it's very difficult to speak about bilingualism until fairly recently. The other thing is that the minority may be Turkish or a part of the minority be Turkish. That is up for discussion. But the minority did not have Turkish as its mother tongue when we speak about large part of the minority. So that is a different matter. So we have this strange situation that the official Turkish attitude is that the minorities should be assimilated to mainstream Turkish culture. And that also, that does not only concern what we usually call Pomaks and Roma, but also the local Turkish culture in Thrace should be assimilated to mainstream Turkish culture. So we have this strange situation that it is the Greek authorities who are promoting minority languages within the minority, like Pomak, which is like the Pomaks. You could say they are Muslim Bulgarian or Muslim Macedonian or whatever. So Greece has the policy of promoting minority language for the Muslim, but not promoting the same language for the Christians. So you have the idea of because of the community structure, because of historical reason, the policy was to assimilate the Slav-speaking Christians while promoting the language of the Slav-speaking Muslims, and which can often, be interpreted as a divide and rule policy. They didn't want a united Turkish minority. They wanted to use the cleavages within the minority to prevent it to being a unified bloc. So you see, it's a very different situation from what you are describing, for example, in Italy. And there are a lot of problems related to this that I can't really discuss without going to great length. But you see here that you have a strange situation. And my point has always been that we should try to get the education of the minority out of the diplomatic relations between Greece and Turkey and in the hand of educators. It should be done on educational criteria, not diplomatic criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? All right. So with that, I would like to close the session number 2, or the last session for today. But before we close the meeting, I want to, yep, of course, yeah.
Actually, the minority policy in Greece is really different from any other democratic countries. Here, for the Turkish minority and Macedonians, we have kin states. And Greek authorities feel as a threat us. And the sub-identities within the Turkish minority started from 1990s, beginning of 1990s, with the father Mitsotakis visited Western Thrace, and it was another minority policy that tried to separate or divide minority into 3 groups: Turks, Pomaks, and Roma. But they didn't ask so-called Pomak people what they feel about their identities. They tried to impose identities to people. For example, for myself, once I met a high-ranked Greek politicians, and he asked my father's origin and then my mother's, and he said, you are semi-Pomak or semi-Turks, because my father's ancestors from Bulgaria, and they moved to Greece, to Western Thrace, and he called my father as Pomak. I feel Turkish. So is it possible to somebody or someone, some authorities, to impose identities to anyone? Yes.
No, it was maybe subtle, but I try to say that I do not involve myself in what people feel. But like you say, it's right. You have two authoritarian states that try to impose their view on the minority. If you look at things like Pomak identity, it's what you talk about in 1991 was a change in Greek policy towards the minority, because before that the dogma was that the minority is a religious minority, it is Muslims, and they tried in all and more ridiculous way to deny the Turkish element in the minority. But if you look before this, you had Pomak policy at certain times. You can see, for example, in voting patterns that you could have tickets which was based on the Pomak part of the population and so on. I don't know if you're aware of Tassos Kostopoulos' book that, yeah, to Makedonikotis Thrakis and so on. I mean, so there are, both when it comes to religion, when it comes to language, when it comes to way of life, you have cleavages within a minority. And then, of course, you can discuss the various nation building models, both in Greece and Turkey. What happened in 1991 was that the Greek government wanted to align its policy with the developments you had in forums like this for minority language. So not only language, but minorities. So in that respect, as they saw, they couldn't keep it just as a religious minority. They were saying that, okay, it is not only, they don't have only religion, they also have language, you know, and things like that. But it's not a unified Turkish minority. It is a minority that has different ethnic groups in it. And words like ethnic is not words that really are part of the Greek vocabulary, you know. So when you use words like ethnic, what do you say? Yeah, ethnic minority, you know. In traditional Greek language, that could only mean a national minority. So although ethnic is a word with Greek roots, they introduced to explain this in Greece with the neologism ethnotiko, which a lot of people in Greece don't really understand. And I'm struggling to teach my students exactly because it's not part of the ideological framework when you define minorities in Greece.
Thank you very much, Professor, for it. We strongly support and understand the conditions of Greece as a country, but as one of the first democratic countries in the world, I believe it's time for the future to come and understanding and respect between the people and the society itself. We are young generations that would want to focus more on the positive side and we don't care much on where people are coming from and what is their religion or origin. We want to understand each other, but we respect the differences and diversities. And with that, I believe that's the key element of such forums. And if such forums can help Greece or any other country in this world to try to understand and respect its own citizens, we're here to share the experiences that until today, unfortunately, are present in one of the most developed countries as Greece within the European Union. As a union itself, we know that most of the countries are respected. They are on the same table, and nobody wants to be on the menu. And for that reason, I believe it's time now more than ever to see all the historical examples, not to repeat them and not to glorify them, but to understand them with respect and dignity, and also to sit down, put a bureaucratic approach to the whole procedures and diversities, and move forward to focus on the development and integration plan of Greece as a country, of Balkan as a region, or Macedonia a region as we are today. So with that being said, I would like to close the floor for questions, and I would like to invite our President Emeritus and co-founder of the organization, Metodia Koloski, to join our floor to give his closing remarks. Meto, are you in? Can you join us?
Yes. Can you hear me now? Sorry, do you hear me?
Can you put the voice up? He's in.
Yes, I hear you. I could hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes. Can we see you as well or not?
Yeah. If you all can hear me, I can begin.
Yes, please.
Great. Thank you, Gordan. Thank you so much. I'm going to be very brief. I want to thank Gordan and Emily and Evgenia and Father Tsarknas and all of our partners for organizing such a great event. I was there last year. I can't make it this year, unfortunately, but I'm really glad that we've continued this event and forum for all groups, linguistic groups, cultural groups, communities, minorities within Greece, but also inviting those from Italy and Wales and other regions in the world to give us, and Romania to give us their perspective and their experiences and challenges that they've gone through. I think what's so important about this forum is, one, giving a voice to the voiceless, those that are denied access to different institutions in their own language, for their own culture. Greece, unfortunately, has institutionalized discrimination for groups outside of the Greek genus and outside of the Treaty of Lausanne that they still from 1922. But I think what needs to happen for the various groups at the table at this forum is, one, I think we need to continue strengthening our friendship, continue strengthening our collaboration, and do what we can to involve more young people and continue the fight for the next generation, because this is not going to be an easy battle to secure equality, inclusiveness, and the benefits that we deserve as citizens within Greece. And so I want to commend you all for being there today, and being part of the discussion, being part of the future, and being part of sort of the solution to the problems. And I hope that, through the collaboration, we can do this on a more regular basis, and figure out working groups and tasks for the groups there. And our friends from Italy, from Wales, from Romania, we're going to need your help, right? We're going to need your help to spread awareness to different fora in the world when we can't participate. If we're not at the table, we need our friends to be the voice for us. And the same when we're at the table and you're not. I think we'll benefit from that and spreading awareness. And I think, by first acknowledging that there's an issue, I think Greece hopefully will become a more democratic society. Macedonians, unfortunately, are not where they need to be within Greece. But I do want to highlight something that, the Romanian speaker said, and Romania is a NATO and EU member state. And the Macedonian community or other linguistic communities or cultural groups are not a threat to Romanian society. And similar, the Welsh people are not a threat to society. And so to British or the UK society and other groups, right? And so countries need to stop seeing these groups as a threat and start coming to terms with reality, and also, I think, ensuring that the rights are respected, and they have international obligations under different the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the European conventions. Greece is a member of the Human Rights Council. How can you be a member of the Human Rights Council when you don't afford equality and basic human rights to certain groups? And so I'm glad this forum is happening. I hope that we're going to continue this and the size of participation is going to grow, but we need all of you to be involved to make sure that that's the case. So I want to thank you all. Thank you again to everyone who took the time to be there. I want to thank our board member, Christina, from the US, who traveled to be there and represent UMD on the ground, and Mario Kristofsky as well. But kudos, I commend you, and I'm looking forward to seeing the fruits of this labor and this forum. And one day we will be equally proud to be Greek citizens for those that are there, when Greece is respecting their and acknowledging their linguistic, cultural identity of different groups in the country. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Meto, for joining our forum from far away, and hopefully next year you will be able to come back again. So with that, I would like to close our forum for today. And as I said in the opening remark, this is definitely not where we should stop our continuation on an intellectual battle. If we fought in the history with, I would say, military equipment, now we fight with pen and words. And that is what makes us so much, I would say, developed and integrated in the societies we live in. And with that reason, as a closing remark, I would like to invite a representative from the Vlach community, a representative from a Macedonian community, and a representative from the Turkish community that, along with me, will sign a resolution and an action plan, which will give us a hope and will give us motivation and step further on how to proceed our work in the year, the continuation of the year.